Hello, and welcome again to another episode of the Caregiver Series. And today I have Patty Jones with me, as I shared just briefly with you last week. And I'm going to ask Patty to share just a little bit about herself. But she's such a blessing. She and I have worked together for many years in hospice work. And so I know that some of you have got to have some questions and concerns, especially when it comes to medication in this particular episode. And so, Patty, just kind of tell us just a little bit about yourself and your background.
I'm a registered nurse and I'm hospice and palliative care certified. I've been practicing hospice nursing a little over 20 years, and I'm the current president of the Northeast Oklahoma Hospice and Palliative Nurses Association. I think I've been on the board about 10 years.
Now, you told me that you at one time served as a firefighter and an EMT.
I did. I love to give back to my community, and so I met my neighbors when they called 911. I'm also a CPR instructor, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And you've been a registered nurse for what, 21 years?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is awesome. So, as I was just talking again to our people here about medication awareness, and my mom had Alzheimer's, as I've kind of shared with you all. And so it's very difficult for Sandy and I to be able to determine when she was in pain or if she was in pain. Sometimes we weren't really able to read the signs, and she wasn't really able to verbalize, to us. And we had just enough information at that time to be kind of dangerous. So, in order to kind of keep us from overdoing things or
You
perhaps
should have called
underdoing
me.
things, yes, well, that was back in '99. I didn't
okay.
quite know you then.
It can be scary. So as hospice nurses, we're always looking for non-verbal cues of pain in an Alzheimer's patient. And that might be guarding or grimacing, maybe rocking to comfort themselves sometimes can be a sign of pain. Maybe someone who's normally docile and withdrawn now is anxious. Anxiety can be a sign of pain. Or maybe someone who's usually outgoing and now they're withdrawn, could be. And as nurses, we use a FLAC score, and that tells us, guessing, because we don't really know if they can't tell us, if they might be in pain. Sometimes it's just positional, maybe it's emotional pain, maybe it's spiritual pain. There's so many kinds.
I was thinking for parents that are taking care of children as well, hydration, I think is really important. And I'm constantly having to tell myself, drink more water. And I'm thinking, especially when you're taking any kind of medication, but especially pain medication, I would think.
Pain medication can be constipating for some people. I don't have a whole lot of experience with pediatrics, but in the frail elderly, sometimes they're on a water pill, which can be dehydrating and constipating. Sometimes they're having trouble swallowing, so their intake is diminished and can cause dehydration. But the number one thing that I see as a hospice nurse is, say, a cancer patient who needs a fentanyl patch or hydrocodone or morphine for pain relief, and that's very constipating. And the last thing we want is to alleviate the pain, but now we have a new kind of pain because of the constipation. So of course we'd always want to do something non-pharmacological first, like incorporating fluids if they can chew and swallow well. Typically people will drink more out of a straw than if they put a glass to their mouth. So if they're not having any dysphagia, meaning trouble swallowing, and not coughing after liquids, we might offer a straw. And it's personal preference. Maybe some people prefer things that are warm and will drink more of that. Maybe some people would prefer iced tea, So we try to figure out what they like the most and provide that. Juices, things high in fiber, if they can chew and swallow well, are good.
What are medications that can actually be crushed up if they have a hard time swallowing a pill?
Medications, some of them are pretty fancy now. Some of them have a matrix in them, and if they are a long-acting medication and you crush it, now you've made it a short-acting medication. So we have to be careful. Your best resource for that, if you don't have a nurse in the home, is to call your pharmacist.
Right.
And they will know. Even if you just crushed an aspirin, it can cause ulcerations in the mouth. So it's very acidic. So we have to be careful with what we crush. And we really need the consent of a pharmacist who's also a physician,
Yes.
or your doctor. But of late, it seems like the pharmacist might be faster returning a call than your primary care doctor.
True. And then there's the concern about alertness when it comes to certain pain meds.
Yeah, so we're always looking at the benefit versus the burden, the risk versus the reward. Yes, we can keep them more alert if their pain is not palliated, but and we use the World Health Organization's analgesic ladder when we're dealing with pain. Physicians do as well. So we'll start with a Tylenol or an ibuprofen, but if anybody has a history of ulcers or reflux, sometimes ibuprofen can cause esophageal spasms or abdominal pain, and so we're not doing them any favors there. Sometimes NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, can cause bleeding. So we really need physician's approval again for that. But we're going to start with something that's not a narcotic first and then work up. We can get, some pharmacies can formulate hydrocodone that has a stool softener in it so that we're not causing more constipation.
I've noticed that not everybody, their physiology, their chemistry is obviously not a cookie cutter situation. For instance, my own wife, her sensitivity to drugs is higher than mine. So I can basically take almost anything that's labeled on the bottle,
Right.
But her sensitivity is quite higher, and I know that's got to be something that everybody needs to be aware of, and more than likely, I would think that if you are caring for your spouse or your child, by this time you more than likely know what they can tolerate. But if you're caring for somebody that you really don't know, and they are reacting in a certain way, and you haven't really put it together, that it might actually be because they're taking too much or that's just too strong for them, then again, that's something that you're going to want to follow up with your physician.
I don't think I fully answered your question, though. Perhaps we are alleviating their pain well, but they're sleeping all the time. And we feel like that takes away our time with them. So again, benefit versus burden. We're always going to follow a plan of care that the physician approves, but this plan of care revolves around what the patient wants for themselves, what the family wants for them. So maybe the goal is to have them in less pain, but as alert as possible.
Right.
Same with anxiety medications. We don't want our loved ones to be anxious, but we don't want them to be snowed either. So we're kind of looking for that happy medium. And a lot of the anxiety medications increase the fall risk. So we have to really be careful with that.
Definitely. Yeah, those are some of the things I hadn't really thought about myself. But I do know as a hospice chaplain, even though my role basically has been more spiritual, when I go into somebody's home, they don't really care whether I'm a chaplain or what. They're going to talk to me, and I'm very much aware sometimes of the things that they struggle with, because they want, mom, dad, grandpa, whoever, to be able to converse with them. They see perhaps they do have a terminal illness, and they're very aware of the fact that they may only have weeks or a month. And so, they just really struggle with the fact that they've got so much that they want to talk about, and yet, the patient's always sleeping. And so, again, it's tough because from my point of view, obviously, kind of from the outside looking in, my heart concern is really for the patient, as well as the family. But it's a struggle because you don't want the person that you really love and care for to be in pain. And it is difficult. It's a difficult compromise.
It is, and another piece to that is perhaps the sleeping more often has nothing to do with the pain medicine, but it's they're preparing
Right.
to die. Withdrawal is the very first thing that we see. They might even be alert, but not paying attention to you as much because they're kind of going internally. They might be doing a life review, they might be praying more. So withdrawal is normal. It's part of the process, an early part of letting go.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of anything that perhaps I haven't covered here that might be a benefit, comes to medications or therapies that...
Well, we're always looking for a way to relieve someone's suffering without a medication. Specifically for Alzheimer's patients, sometimes just environmental changes. And I'll tell you a story that I think is very endearing. I had a patient whose mother had Alzheimer's end stage, and she was sundowning. I think a lot of us can recognize that when the sun goes down, some patients get more anxious. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, her mother would start to pace and worry and get very anxious. And we had oral Valium in the home for her anxiety, but she would spit it out. So I arrived the next day at 2:45 and distinctly remembered hearing a school bus go by. And it dawned on me that perhaps this woman didn't think she was 80. In her Alzheimer's brain, what if she thought she was 35 and knew that it was time for the children to get off the bus, yet she hadn't seen them? So on a whim, I asked her daughter to get a baby doll. Go to the store and buy a doll and give it to your mother at 2:30. And it worked without medication.
Oh my gosh.
Her mom would rock that baby and the school bus would come and go and didn't seem to bother her at all. She wasn't pacing. And now as her disease progressed, we did have to get some topical anxiety medication for her, but it wasn't something that she needed every single day. So environment is everything. We're going to look at the environment first. Maybe it's too hot or too cold. Maybe it's too bright or too dark. Maybe there's someone yelling at each other on the television that we're not even paying attention to. We're so used to it, bantering. Or I'm going to look at the environment first. I'm going to see, are they comfortable? Are they in pain? Are they anxious? Maybe they're overtired. Maybe they've had too much caffeine. I think it's brilliant that a lot of memory units only serve decaffeinated coffee to the residents. That can be pretty helpful.
Yes.
Simple little things sometimes.
Right. I didn't know that. Well, great. Well, hey, I just want to thank you again, Patty, for taking time to sit with me and cover some of these issues because, when you're in that position, when you're in that place of having to care for somebody, we need all the wisdom and the information that we can get so that when they have recovered or when they've gone on, we feel good about the service we've provided. So I've asked Patty if she'll come back next week and do a talk to us about hospice. I know just from my own personal experience initially that I had some concerns. We hear so much about hospice and red flags go off sometimes because we're because of really out of ignorance and out of anxiety and stories that we've heard. And so knowing that Patty's been in hospice care for years, I believe that she would really be a great resource. And so please tune in next week. And again, if this is helping you or if you know somebody who might be able to benefit from these series, this is the 6th episode of the Caregiver series. And let me just encourage you, go ahead and forward it and look forward to seeing you next week. Lord bless you. Bye now.